A sensei is ready for a showdown. This is your look at the new NECA Toys Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splinter vs. Baxter. After being accidentally exposed to radioactive ooze, 4 ordinary household pets are transformed into a band of wisecracking, pizza-loving, villain-dicing adolescent reptiles. Meet Leonardo, the super-cool sword-wielding leader, Raphael, the hot-head-hurling manholes and one-liners in rapid succession, Donatello, the brain behind the brawn, and Michelangelo, the ice-cream pizza-gobbling party animal. Whether it's facing fierce enemies or saving humanity from near extinction, with the guidance of their sensei, these heroes in a half-shell are always ready for straight out of the sewer action. Before we get down to the review of Splinter and Baxter the Fly, the first thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall the figures actually stand. I'd like to thank as well the folks over at NECA Toys that provided the samples that we're having a look at in this review. If you're in the market and like to pick this one up for yourself, Baxter and Splinter, of course, sold as the set, is available right now in stores and online as well. Splinter stands 5.4 inches in height, so he's about 5.5 inches in height. Switching that to centimeters, then you're looking at the figure standing 13.7. Switching that back, of course, to inches again. There we go. Get that all prepped and ready. We're going to take it right to the very top of Baxter Stockman's head. And he is a little bit smaller than Splinter, but just by how much? According to the trusty tape measure of mine, you're looking at Baxter the Fly being 4.3 inches in height. Switching that to centimeters again, then you're looking at the figure standing 11 centimeters exactly. Having a few turtle toys on the ready, let's do a couple of size comparisons. We'll bring in one of the turtles. This is Raphael. Now, this is the lime green colored Raphael of the more merchandise promoted turtles. And of course, we have the darker green color Michelangelo, more familiar to his cartoon counterpart. I still like the darker green myself. For some bad guys, of course, to compare it with Baxter, we can bring in the Shredder. And why not? We'll also bring in Krang. Krang is actually about the same height in his, at least his exosuit, that is. We can also bring in a foot soldier. And why not? We'll bring in Bebop. Just strange for me just to bring in Bebop out of nowhere. But just to kind of give you an idea, these were just the ones I grabbed on the ready. Kind of give you an idea, though, of how Splinter and Baxter Fly stack up with the vast amount of turtle figures that NECA Toys have been producing over the last little while. Having a look at the accessories that come included with the two figures, we'll start with the largest one first to come included, and it's actually behind the plastic tray that holds the figures and holds the accessories. You get yourself a rather large tatami mat. The mat itself, as best I could probably describe it, it has almost like a foam feel to it. It's not quite the consistency of what I would describe as like a chamois, but it definitely does have a very light kind of foam feel. You can see it's been cross-hatched here, all done in yellow, and an outline done in purple. It's very thin, but serves a perfect purpose for, of course, if you're going to be displaying Splinter and the other turtle brothers in their turtle lair, why not include a tatami mat? I do like the fact that they come included with that. So, going through the rest of the accessories now, and may I just say, I think of all the turtle sets that NECA have released thus far, the Splinter vs. Baxter may very well top the list of having the most things coming included with them. You'll see what I mean when we kind of go through all the vast accessories that NECA packed with this set. I really want to start with this one first, as being a personal favorite of mine. Anybody that watched the original classic cartoon of the Turtle Brothers may recognize this as the pan-dimensional spacecraft computer, or also known as Z. The neat thing about the Z here is he does have a lenticular screen. So as you tilt it side to side, you can see that he changes his facial expression. And all it is basically just grooves. There are overlapping images that when, again, you tilt it from certain angles, they're not reinventing anything necessarily, but giving a lenticular screen definitely is a clever idea of giving him then a super expressioned face, again, changing his different expressions. Now, I mean, the neat thing about this is it just looks like a conventional computer. If you really don't look at it straight on and recognize Z's portrait, and you're only really looking at it from the side, it could easily serve also as just a regular computer. If you have a diorama, have perhaps Donatello working at the computer. Or you could even have April O'Neil typing on it, pretending like it's a computer from Channel 6. I guess they could technically re-release this mold, not necessarily with Z on the front. Maybe they may tool the top just slightly different, but easily they could re-release this as some style of computer, maybe like an accessory set. As you can see, he's got some nice painted in details there. The keys, not quite your traditional lettered keys, as again, they kind of look like little Kit Kats. There's 5 per row and 4 across. Again, that's a total of 20. But really neat. The interesting thing about this, too, and I'm wondering a story behind this, if you take Z, and if you remember the episode that Z was in, I think he debuted in Bye Bye Fly, which was in the 3rd season, if memory serves me correctly. But if you flip him upside down, he has what I can guess to be a ball joint, a peg joint on the bottom. Now, in the cartoon, he actually has at some point body. He actually has like a blue energy body. You could even just guess that maybe down the road, or maybe the original plan was to release Z with a body. Maybe they may even just re-release this guy and give him the energy body. It'd be definitely interesting if that was the case. So I really like the fact that they actually include him. I mean, even if they didn't pack him into this set, I think all the other accessories that come included with these guys are still pretty cool. Suppose we could stick with Baxter's stuff for the time being before making our way over to Splinter's accessories. Up next, he comes included with the transmutation gun, something canon to the cartoon and plays a role when we look at the other things that come included with the figure. As you can see, it does have the dial featured on the back here, showcasing 6 various different species. In case you are curious, no, the dial can't rotate. If you rotate this, you're only going to serve to break this off and be disappointed with yourself for the rest of the afternoon. It seems like the species currently is selected is the fly. That may connect to something else in a second. It looks like it's all been cast in a white plastic, and then they've gone in there and painted the details, like, for example, purple and the gray handle down below. There's got little dials there on the side. A really nice touch to see that they include something, again, cartoon-specific that you can display along with your figure. To put this into his hand, I will say when you get the figure out of the packaging, he does have closed fists. I sort of have quickly skipped and jumped my way into changing already the hands. You can see with one of the gripping hands, he holds the transmutation gun perfectly fine. It does sit a little low, though, like sits a little on an angle, so you can kind of compensate that by bending the elbow. He does have double hinges in his elbows, by the way. So I do like the fact he does come included with it. Likely going to be the thing I'm going to display the figure with. Moving on to some of the things that you could mutate things into. Segueing ourselves, he does come included with Gerbil Mikey. And you know it's Mikey by the fact he does have the orange headband. It doesn't have any articulation to speak of. You can't rotate the head or you can't move the arms or anything like that. But the shock on his face is more than enough for me. And the fact that we actually do get, again, episode-specific accessories is really super cool. But like I said, it doesn't do really anything else. He's got a little bit of paint on the bottom of him, but generally, like, the paint is pretty good on this guy. And just the price of admission alone is the face portrait that they gave this guy. Just super shocked and surprised to find himself that he's turned into a gerbil. Moving on to other things that have been transmutated. Baxter also comes included with a little Baxter shredder. And you know it's shredder by the fact he still manages to pull off a cape look. That cape look works well considering he is a fly after all. Big giant fly eyes. You can see the shredder helmet and shredder spiked shoulders on either side. A nice little cute version of Shredder. He doesn't have a stand or anything like that. I mean, he really doesn't technically need a stand. If you put him down on a surface, between the 4 legs that are already firmly planted on the ground is more than enough to keep the fly Shredder, without falling over, of course. I do like the fact, and again, for how small this guy is, there really is a lot of detail put into little tiny fly Shredder. The remainder of Baxter's stuff consists of a secondary gun, possibly a ray gun. I don't know if it's specifically connected to an episode at all, or whether it's just a provided gun for Baxter to carry around with him. You can see it's been molded here in gray plastic, painted nicely in a turquoise blue along the top, with some nice accents done all in black, the little buttons here on the sides. He also comes included with a bunch of interchangeable hands, of course. Because it's fine and good to come included with guns, but if you can't actually hold them, what purpose does it serve? So when you do get this guy out of the packaging, he does have a closed fist. Yeah, not the most exciting, is it? But he does have the much more exciting gripping hands of various different varieties, all with, as you can see, either trigger firing fingers or he does have just like the regular gripping hand, as you can see right here. He comes with those. And to swap them out, we can go ahead and just grab the figure. I suppose I could take the other gun out of his hand. We'll just put that down for the time being. I've already gone ahead and swapped this one out. But if you do want to swap the hands, it's just simply a case of holding on to the arm and very carefully wiggling this off, popping the hand out. You'll see what is left behind is a very tiny peg joint. So wiggle those off very carefully. Find the hand you want to swap it to and just wiggle it back while applying a little bit of pressure. And it pops perfectly in place. I suppose while we are currently holding Baxter, we might as well just continue running with it, as we'll have a closer look at Baxter the Fly. Now, it's not to say that maybe down the road we don't get ourselves a regular Baxter, but I know for me at least, if I ever wanted to get a choice between a regular Baxter Stockman and Baxter Fly, you know I'm going to be settling on Baxter Fly. He has some really nice design elements going for him. Now, I think we are actually still getting the Turtles in Time version of Baxter Stockman as well, which obviously isn't going to be tied so much into the cartoon. It's going to be tied into the video game. I do like the detailing on this guy quite a bit. You can see like the fly eyes, for example. As you can see, there's nice dark coloring on the one side. And on the polar end of that, you've got a lighter color, a little beam of light shining on the other. Little whiskers there on his face. The mouth doesn't open and close, unlike Splinter that we'll be looking at in a second, but he's got all these really interesting little fly hairs all around his eyes. Of course, when you spin it around, you'll see a little more of Baxter, normal Baxter, before he's transmutated. And you can see he's got some really interesting little hairs all done in kind of very warm mustard yellow. As for the rest of his outfit, he does have the shirt, V-neck sweater, with a regular shirt underneath and his nice bright yellow bow tie. I don't know if you saw it when I squeezed it, but he does have a very rubbery torso. And actually, when I'm squeezing it, you feel very little of an actual body that's underneath all this. I can feel a torso right here, right where the line on his chest actually is. There's a denser plastic underneath that. But right here, there's very little, it seems, actually, of a joint. It's probably just a singular post that goes from the top of his torso all the way down to the bottom of his waist. He's got some really good coloring going for him. Of course, traditional fly parts for Baxter, you flip him around to the back, and he's got these extra little fly legs, which do have their own posability, which we'll talk about in a second. These hinge back and forth. And of course, he has his fly wings. These do have their own posability going for them as well. But he's a cute little version. If I could consider Baxter Fly as a cute little character to be putting on a shelf, he definitely does look really good. And like with all the other cartoon turtle figures that NECA have put out, adding the additional black lining, this panel lining everywhere, really does make him feel, when you're looking at him, as something that was pulled from the screen. Again, he's got some really nice bright coloring. The paint's really nice and clean on him, especially when it comes to his face. The face would be a place, if anything, you could say that maybe there would be a little bit of paint problems, but it is really clean on this figure, especially the little yellow bow tie that he has. For articulation on this guy, his head rotates back and forth, hinges up, hinges down, that nice ball joint going on there. His arms hinge out, and you can rotate them all the way around. In addition to that, he has a hinge at the top and a hinge in the, well, top of the elbow at least, and a hinge down below at the forearm where you can double hinge those elbows. By the way, I didn't have any issues really with the figure having tight joints or any real problematic areas on Baxter Fly. Just taking him out of the packaging, like I said, you just very carefully bend those joints until the joints start freeing up. And then, like I said, after that, you have no problems whatsoever. Torso rotates back and forth. You can hinge it up and down. His legs split out. You go forward and back on the legs. Double hinge on the knee. And, of course, he has articulation in the foot with a nice little angled ankle pivot going in there as well. And, of course, I can't forget the fact that he does also have the peg holes on the undersides of his feet. So in case you do have some issues with Baxter standing, I don't seem to have too many of the issues, you can always make use of a NECA display stand. Just pop those in place, maybe minus, of course, the sound effects. Just pop those into place, and you got yourself a little display stand you can hold him up by. Quickly flipping him around, I know I just talked about it loosely earlier, but he does have articulation on the hinge joints on his legs. You can see the joint is on either side. I had a little bit of additional paint on this side, so what I ended up doing was I just took a little bit of I took a small screwdriver, just flaked a little bit of that paint away, and it was more than enough to, like I said, bend those arms. Those, I guess you would consider them fly arms, not fly legs. Anyways, though the arms rotate back and forth, you hinge them back and forth this way. Same idea on this side. He does have the wing articulation. The wings can rotate, and you can also hinge them back and forth. Just before we go back over to Splinter, of course, there's going to be a lot to talk about for Splinter. One extra little touch of detail that I like that NECA put on the back of Baxter is they gave him noticeable rips on the back of his sweater. So it actually literally looks like his wings and legs, or arms, ripped their way through the back of the fabric until they were finally exposed on the outside. So I really think that that was a neat touch, and something they didn't have to include, but NECA included it anyways when it came to the release of Baxter Fly. On to Splinter's accessories next, and in no particular order of grabbing, we'll just grab a plant. Why not? Grab a plant when all's said and done. He comes included with the Doku Plant, and what you may see is a very bright, colorful looking plant, but what you may not know is that each of the individual leaves are all made of a very soft, pliable plastic. I do like the vibrancy that they've given to the leaves, as well as the pink flowers, as well as these center sections done in yellow. It's been all potted in a purple plant pot. Didn't mean to spit all over you there, but I just like the fact that they come included with things like this. They don't always have to be so heavily episode-specific accessories. Even periodically, if we just get extra things that decorate the turtle lair. I hope at one point we even get ourselves a front-faced turtle lair diorama. Just literally the sides, the back, and the bottom. And just have a place where you can actually put your turtles' displayed figures. Hopefully that's something that NECA will consider down the road. But in the meantime, we're looking at a potted plant. We'll move that to the side. He comes also included, going back to beginnings, I suppose, he comes with a little tiny rat. Now, the rat's similar to Gerbil Mikey. Actually doesn't have any articulation to speak of, even though technically it looks like his arms almost want to move. Don't move them, though. Resist the urge, if any, to not bend the arms, because I think they're ultimately just going to break. They're made of a softer plastic. So, again, just as a little display piece, why not? It doesn't even have to necessarily be the rat that does it. This could just be a nice little friend rat that you could have displayed while maybe Sensei Splinter is meditating. Just like the detail of that. Move that aside. He comes also included, I don't even know where to start. He comes with so much. He comes included with a book, for example. Not one you can read necessarily. This book actually doesn't open up and reveal the pages inside. But you can see it's a very nice molded book. Heck, why not? Give us more of these. You can see it looks like possibly his friend Rat has started nibbling away into the actual sides of the book, or the front and back of book. But it's been bound, all done in gold. It's a nice looking book, and really has a nice look, realistic look to it. In fact, actually, when I got it out of the packaging, I almost wanted to do this. Like, I thought I could open it up. Again, you can't open the book. What you do, however, the go get, and I'll just move that one to the side, he does come with an opened book of, flipping it around, art. Why not? And on the one side, while the art may be crude on that side, on the inside, you've actually got all the original artists that would inspire, of course, the turtles' names. Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo, and Raphael. I do like the fact that they include that. Now, this one doesn't close, obviously. It's just all molded plastic. But the fact they would take the time and come up with a book that Splinter could maybe be reading, or where he came up with the idea, of course, of naming all the turtle brothers. Again, Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo, and Raphael. Put that to the side. He also comes included with a scroll. Now, there isn't really no place that you can put this necessarily, because Splinter doesn't come included. I think I have this upside down, actually. There's no real place that you can actually put this. I guess you could have it in Splinter's hands, for example. But if maybe down the road they give you like a little small wood table, you could put that on top of the table. Or if you could find some other means to maybe hang this on a wall behind him. But he does come with a nice little scripture of scroll. It's already, as you can see, been completely opened up. And it has a little tattered rips and tears on the sides. Just a nice looking scroll. Oh, he comes with more. Much more. Well, not that much more. He comes also included with a katana. I'm going to consider for the time being that this is a katana, even though I think the blade is too short to be a katana. Anybody can let me know down below in the comment section. But you can see it's been painted nicely in gray with a nice dark, bold black line dividing the bottom to the top, where it looks like the bottom is actually a slightly more darker color. I do like the handle, the hilt, all done in a nice light mustard. I keep going back to mustard. A darker, warmer mustard for the handle, lighter mustard for the coloring of the guard here. Now, you can either display Splinter, Sensei Splinter, sorry Splinter. You can either display him with the sword as is, or if you want to add a little bit of fire, why not? You can actually take the little fire attachment that comes included with it, and it slides right onto the sword. Admittingly, yes, it doesn't stay on the sword, so if you tilt the sword down, for example, a lot of times it's prone to sliding off. If you lock it into place, though, like I just did, kind of guarantees that it's not going to be going anywhere. So when you are putting it in place, when you get to the end of it, then push it just a little bit more. And like I said, it'll stay in place. You got some nice translucent orange at play here, giving you a nice molded fire on both sides. And a great way, again, just to give Splinter something else to hold, if you aren't going to be displaying him necessarily with the next accessory. Segue ourselves into his cane, which of course would be my preferred way of displaying the rat for myself. I really like the idea that he comes with his trusty cane. You can see, again, like all the other accessories, I know I sound like a broken record by now, but everything been touched very generously, as you can see, with some nice dark black paint to give it that look and feel and vibe that it's coming from the cartoon. Now, again, when you want to put that into Splinter's hands, I have already swapped one of the hands out. There I go, cheating already, but he does have one relaxed hand. That would have been the case on this side as well. I've already just gone ahead and swapped it out for a gripping hand. You just literally slide the cane down until it really gives you a little bit of resistance, and it'll stay perfectly in place. I suppose technically, while we are holding Splinter, he comes also with a Yin Yang Necklace that you can just take and fit around his head. It's a little tight quarters, so I would recommend, if you are trying to get it around his head, just be careful. Just get it around his ears. I suppose you could technically take the head off, but as you can see, just a little bit of perseverance, a little bit of patience, you can get that wrapped around Splinter's neck. It's a little more difficult, it seems, to actually take it off of his neck, because you have to kind of get it around his nose, his big giant rat schnoz. Just fit that around his ears, for example, fit around the other ear, and then take it right off. I like the fact that they come included with this, but I mean, technically I would not probably display Splinter with it. I do like the fact he comes included with it nonetheless. And last but certainly not least, before we get down to looking at this rat, he comes also with some interchangeable hands. Some of the hands, for example, are meditation hands or pointing hands. Comes with a couple of other meditation hands, so to speak. And he also comes with, like, again, like just hands of various different configurations and shapes with a couple of other gripping hands. These hands are really ideally suited, for example, if you want to have him holding like the scroll, for example. This hand is perfect for that, and it holds the scroll fine in place. Or again, if you want to display him with, say, let's just say the book, for example. The book spine, or I guess the other way around if you wanted to, he can actually hold the book perfectly fine with hands like this. And that is the same hand, actually, just in case you are curious, it's the same hand that was on that side of the figure. It's the exact same hand, so it has that same grip allowance, allowing you to hold the larger, thicker accessories, such as the book. Now, looking at this radical rat, I suppose what we could technically do is just remove the cane. I don't need it for the time being. We'll just put that to the side. Truly, 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 the thing that excited me the most of this set was the Splinter figure, although nothing slouching on necessarily Baxter Fly. But for me, to complete, of course, the Turtles, and we already have April O'Neil and Casey Jones, the one thing that we have been absent of all this whole time is actually a Splinter. And I'm so glad we finally get him. You can see he is wearing his gi, as you can see. It does open up technically, so if you do want to have Splinter walking around with no clothes on, I don't know why you would want to necessarily do that. But he does have the option. You could technically just untie the belt and just take it off completely. But again, why would you? The head sculpt is very accurate to the way he looks in the cartoon. I did say this earlier when we were looking at Baxter Fly, that his mouth doesn't open and close, and it seemed kind of strange that I would say that. Well, actually, if you go into Splinter's mouth here, he does actually open and close his mouth. How about that? So if you want to have him yelling, for example, at Michelangelo for leaving more pizza crust all over the lair, you can certainly pull that off. Or if he wants to be yelling at Shredder, I guess ultimately it's going to just be Splinter yelling at somebody. You can certainly do that. I guess also if you have him more in a gestured pose, fighting the foot, probably would make some sense to have his mouth slightly open. I'm probably not going to go to that extreme, but I think I might just have it just slightly opened. I like the idea of being able to see a little bit of visible tongue. I like the fact that they did have an open and close option for Splinter's mouth. Again, you've got that nice dark black panel lining. It always seems to be something I keep continuing to talk about when it comes to these cartoon turtles. But having that bold line, especially around Splinter's eyes, does lend better to the idea that he looks like he was pulled from the cartoon. In addition to that, all the areas like the wrinkles on his nose, for example, outlined areas on the fur on his mouth, for example, all get afforded that additional black, and it certainly does wonders when it comes to the look of the figure, looking more like his cartoon counterpart. Again, I like the dark coloring, the dark burgundy color that they've given his gi, with some additional yellow accents you can see there on either side. And I like the fact it's a very soft, manageable fabric, especially when it comes to the figure's articulation. Of course, when we get a little bit further down, you got big, giant rat feet. Look at the size of those. Yes, everybody look down at Splinter's ginormous feet. You can see that they have been wrapped up, and even though they looked like they don't have any bit of articulation, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes, which we'll talk about all in a second. And of course, he does have his tail on the back. Now, the tail does have a wire frame. I would have assumed it would have had a wire frame. Any other case of anything that has a long tail, like a xenomorph, naturally lends itself to the idea, of course, there's going to be those little air holes, and he does have the wire frame tail. But, you lift up the gi, for example, he does also have a hinge joint, so you can actually move the tail up and down. This is something necessarily that the xenomorphs don't tend to have, and because of that, you can actually get yourself a nice little tripod standee for Splinter without having to manipulate and bend the tail to get the same effect. While I do appreciate the fact that they gave us the wire frame, I appreciate more so the fact that they actually gave us a hinge joint on his tail where you could actually move it up and down, and you could technically just leave off bending and manipulating the tail at all. Running through the articulation on Splinter, he does get himself a ball joint and all the things that benefit having a ball joint. So you can move his head up, you can move it down quite low actually. You can also rock the head back and forth, and of course you can rotate the head all the way around this way. What I wasn't expecting, just before we talk about that, where's he going with that? Just before we talk about the other thing, of course you can get your finger behind his two buck teeth and drop down the mouth via a hinge joint located at the back of the figure's head sculpt, right there. One thing I left you hanging on, though, and I really wasn't expecting to see this, if you move the gi out of the way, now you can probably really see it. He's got this secondary neck piece that's attached to the body by a ball joint. And because of that, you also get the benefit of this also being able to move up and down, of this also being able to rock back and forth, and you could technically rotate the neck piece as well. So you get a little bit of extra for your actual head articulation. Then for his upper torso, his torso is the exact same thing. You have an upper torso ball joint. You can hinge it up, hinge it down, rock it back and forth, and yeah, you can rotate the top half of him at least. As for his arms, the arms hinge out. Sorry, Splinter, I'm going to have to roll up your gi sleeves, for example, just to show you guys. You can see he's got a double hinge joint on the elbow. So, for example, he already has the ball hinge joint on the shoulder. You can hinge those out at a full 90-degree angle bend. You can move them forward, you can move them back. It gets a little tight here because, of course, you've got all this extra fabric working when you start moving the arm forward and back this way. But it's still loose enough that it doesn't get too hung up on itself. Going back, though, everyone's drawing now attention to his scrawny-looking arms. We'll just roll up his sleeve here. I wanted to show you guys here that he does have a double hinge joint on the elbow. So there's a peg joint here and a peg joint here, giving you that double hinge joint. I'm glad the fact that even though he's a slightly skinnier figure, NECA would have still taken the time to give him a double hinge joint. As for the hands rotate all the way around. You can hinge them back and forth, and that's whatever hand you, of course, decide to display him with. Drawing even more embarrassment to the poor rat, you can split his legs out. He has a ball joint working behind the scenes here. The legs go forward, the legs go back. He has a swivel right at the top, basically where that's pegged into place. It has a double hinge on the knee. There's one, and the secondary one is actually at the top here. It's a little harder to actually get in there and see, but there's the joint right on the back to give you that indication that it's not just a straight-out swivel. He does actually have a double hinge joint on the knee, but it seems like the bottom one works a lot better than the one at the top by his thigh. Then, of course, when it comes to his feet, his sized feet here, he does have the peg hinge joint, so that hinges up. And of course you can rock it back and forth. And Splinter does have, in case you're curious, yes, he does have toe articulation. Although I did notice on both the figure here, both feet at least, that this hinge joint is really tight. And I'm not really sure why. It seems like there's really very little wiggle space to work here. On the back, on the bottom here, it actually looks like it should hinge a lot more than what it actually does. But if you look at the top here, it doesn't look like it gives you very much clearance at all, giving you just a very narrow ledge for those feet to hinge back and forth. Again, I'm having the bottom feet at least, the little toe articulation is giving me some difficulty when it comes to bending. But at the end of the day, really, I'm not really looking to display this figure with bent feet or bent toes. Having him firmly planted flat is the way I'm going to be displaying him. And of course, I'm going to be displaying him, I think, if anything else, going to display him with his cane. Again, the figure's two straightened figures set up here. Of course, finishing up the review. At the end of the day, I really love the fact that we did get ourselves a Splinter and a Baxter. Ideally, I mentioned this before when we were looking at the April O'Neil, that April could have been potentially packaged with Splinter, and she ultimately just instead got packaged with a damaged foot soldier. Even though they ended up waiting on Splinter, I think the wait was well worth it, as we get ourselves both solid releases of Sensei Splinter and Baxter Fly here. Now, I would never accuse the former Turtle 2-packs of having filler figures, but I guess the argument could be made when we looked at the Casey Jones and we looked at the April O'Neil sets respectively. We did get a brand new figure that everybody was wanting, an April O'Neil and a Casey Jones, and yes, admittingly, we did get ourselves another foot soldier, but to its argument, it wasn't just a regular stock foot soldier. It had something different going for them. Both the foot soldiers looked damaged, or in some cases completely separated at the torso. And I like the fact that we didn't get just a regular foot soldier. Fast forward ahead, though. Now we're looking at the Splinter and Baxter set. A set that, with both these figures being so good, they could have easily been packaged on their own, or packaged on their own along with another army-building figure. But no, NECA didn't do that. I think they gave us two top-tier characters that we've been wanting for a while, packed together, so that when you came to picking these up for yourself, you picked up the one set, and you get yourself two great figures inside. Not only do you get solid-looking releases, cartoon versions of both Splinter and Baxter, but you get a whole ton of cool accessories as well. Currently here in Final Looks, of course, I've got Baxter Fly holding the pan-dimensional spacecraft computer, or also known as Z. Curious, though, again, why there's a peg joint on the bottom. It looks like a peg joint on the bottom of Z's keyboard. I was going to say the bottom of his head, but on the bottom of his keyboard makes me think either they had planned to give us an energy body for Z, or it may be something that we may get later on as possibly, I don't know, an accessory add-on. If that's the case, that's pretty exciting. But because the only other thing I can think of is, well, why would they have given us that little noticeable joint? I mean, it's pretty obvious to see that's supposed to be connected to something. I don't even know what the story is behind it. I hope it leads to an energy body at least for Z. Like I said, this set comes with a ton of cool accessories. Here in Final Looks, I've just got him with the flaming sword, Splinter that is. But I think at the end of the day, I'm probably just going to be displaying him with a book in one hand and a cane in the other. My Splinter is all about teaching the wrongs to the turtles, not necessarily going out there and fighting people with a fiery sword. Although I have to admit, that fiery sword is a nice touch. A big thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys that provided the sample of Splinter and Baxter that we had a look at in this review. Let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of this set, whether you picked it up for yourself or based on this review. Also, the question for today's video is, what Ninja Turtle character that hasn't already, of course, been created by NECA Toys would you like to see NECA create for a future release? I'd like to read your comments down below. If you are also new to the channel and you're liking all the content you're seeing, consider then the idea of hitting the subscribe button down below. Consider the bell notification, hitting that ring-a-ling-a-ling, that bell notification, so that you can tell YouTube when new videos are coming onto this channel, you want to get those friendly reminders. And of course, I can throw out the friendly reminder as well that Monday to Friday, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when new videos will be popping up. Lots of new NECA reviews lined up, so as always, keep those peepers ever peeled. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.